Hello and welcome to the Bucketlister Podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucketlister Podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford, and today I am going to be chatting to you about cameras because I get asked quite a lot about what cameras I take on my trips to take photos and videos. Now, obviously, from my perspective, I'm also thinking about it from a marketing perspective, from taking images of the groups that we take when we're away. But for me, I don't take any real specialist equipment with me. Like, nothing of mine is overly expensive. I suppose I've got 5 different cameras that I take, and quite often I'll take 4 of them with me because actually 3 of them are very small. And the first thing is obviously nowadays is your mobile phone, and I'm a bit of an Apple fiend in terms of, I've been bought in by Apple and I have Apple everything. So I've got an iPad, I've got a MacBook. So obviously it makes sense for me to have an iPhone. And I tend to make sure that I've always got the latest one. And I mean, to be fair, though, I didn't get an iPhone 14. I went from the 13 to the 15 because there wasn't a great deal of difference in the camera between the 13 and the 14. But the reason why I update it is not to get a new phone. It's because how good the cameras have become. And, the camera on the iPhone 15, I think, is absolutely amazing. And there are people out there who will obviously argue this and tell me that their Google or their Samsung or whichever phone it is they've got, it's got a better camera on it. But for me, being an Apple lover, I think, compared to what the camera was like on the 13, the camera is a whole lot better on the 15. I love the options on the iPhone. I was in Morocco on the whitewater rafting trip, and I got some amazing night sky photos with stars in the background, and everybody else was around with their cameras, and they were kind of getting nowhere near what I was getting on my camera. So I think, for me, having your mobile phone with you is the first thing that everybody should have. Now, obviously, you can edit on the go on your phone. And when you're on a trip, it might be that if you're going to use your camera, so say you're on a Kilimanjaro or an Everest Base Camp trek, you're not necessarily going to be using your phone. So you can just put your phone into airplane mode, save the battery, and then the camera will probably last you a couple of days, on battery life. So that's always the first thing I take. And if I look back through all of the photos that I've probably taken over the last 12 months, and if I look at a lot of the photos that get put on the Bucket List Company's social media pages, for example, and used on the website, a lot of those photos have actually just been taken on my phone. And for years, I had a DSLR camera, a big camera. It was a heavy camera. I had multiple lenses for it. But it was always a real effort to take it out your bag, to set it up, to take a photo. Whereas it's much easier just to get your camera out, your phone out of your pocket, and just snap away, take a video, and do it that way. So, that's my first tip, is obviously having your mobile phone with you. And for a lot of people, that might be the only thing that you actually take on a trip. And I surprised quite a few people recently when, when we were in Iceland, we were going into the spa pools. And, I just took my phone in with me because an iPhone is waterproof. You can put an iPhone up to a couple of meters for up to 30 minutes is what they say. But, if you're just, if it's just getting splashed in whatever in a pool, or when I was whitewater rafting, my phone just lived in my buoyancy aid. And I kept taking it out and getting photos and videos of the group. And you get a much better photo. I see people with the the plastic cases to put their phones in to protect them. And I don't think you ever really get a nice, clear photo on one of those. Whereas, with an iPhone, if it's a newer one, just check your model. And I'm not going to say which one when they started to become waterproof. But I certainly know that the last few models have been waterproof. And you can take them down to a certain depth. And I'm just going to actually have a look and see what that is. Yeah, here we go. I'm just having a quick Google while I look because I didn't want to give you any information. But from the iPhone 7, they are waterproof. So from the iPhone 7. So the iPhone 7 is waterproof up to 30 minutes at 1 meter deep. Whereas from the 12, 13, 14, and 15, which is, I imagine, what everybody would have now, you can put them up to 6 meters deep, up to 30 minutes, just with the phone itself. So, go and use it and get it done. The only thing I will say is that when you do it, make sure that it's properly dried and the charging point is properly dry before you try charging it and putting electricity through it, because that could really screw it up. So just make sure that it's dried out. But you can use it in the water, and I have done, and it takes some really, really good photos. So that would be my first thing. Another tip for when you're using an iPhone or using your phone is, obviously you tend to shoot a whole lot of photos and video while you're away. It takes up a lot of space. And something to do in quite a lot of the time, and I find myself doing this, is I'll end up with like 3 or 4 very similar photos where I've just kind of like clicked it. And what I do every evening is I will sit there and go through it and just delete all the photos that I don't want. So I'm only keeping photos that I want on my phone. And I might go through in the evening as well and just give those photos. And if Lindsay, one of our customers, has listened to this, she'll have a little chuckle when I say this. But I'll go through and edit the photos as well, and give them a few tweaks and crop them, and just because I think it makes it look like a better photo. But I edit all of my photos. I will not put a photo out that hasn't been edited. I think that's super important when you're taking photos and you want them to look good. So I think the software on the iPhone, just the standard software, is very, very good for editing photos as well. So phone is the first thing that I take. Super handy. Also easy to charge, and you're going to probably have your phone on you anyway for Wi-Fi, etc. So that's all fine. The next thing that obviously I have got a bigger camera as well, and I used to have a DSLR with changeable lenses, but I changed that a few years ago and went mirrorless. So it's a lot smaller camera, it's a lot lighter weight, and it's still got the interchangeable lenses, so I can have different lenses. And if I'm thinking about a trip to go on, and when I will take my camera with me, my big camera, well, it's not that big, but bigger than a phone, is if I'm taking underwater photos. So I've got the waterproof housing for that camera. So if I'm doing a diving trip or a snorkeling trip, then I will take that camera with me, because obviously I can then go a lot deeper with the camera than I can with a mobile phone. So, and then the other reason I will take it is if I need to do a lot of filming, and also more importantly, if I want to take night sky photos. Although, the modern mobile phones can take night sky photos, if you compare a photo on a mirrorless or a DSLR camera compared to a mobile phone, there's a big difference. You can open the shutter up for longer on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera than you can on a phone. That will let more light into the sensor, and will give you will take more of the night sky in. So if I know I'm going to be going somewhere where I want to be getting night sky photos, Milky Way photos, northern light photos, then I will take my mirrorless camera with me. And now I've now only got 2 lenses that I take for my mirrorless camera. I've got a wide angle lens on a 10 to 18 mil lens, and I've also got 24 to 240 lens as well, which I call my travel lens, because it basically gives me a whole scope of different size lenses within one lens. It's quite a heavy lens, but I only need to carry one, and I can pretty much get everything I want with that one lens. Obviously, other things I need to take when I'm taking that one is obviously spare batteries. If I'm out on a trek or I'm doing something for a long time, it's very difficult to charge the batteries. So I've got 3 or 4 batteries for that camera, and I'll start off the trip with them all fully charged. And that's probably enough for me to get through it. And I'll also need to take with me a couple of memory cards as well. And what I tend to do is change the memory cards out every day and put a fresh memory card in for that day, because what I certainly don't want to do is to have a corrupt memory card. And if I've only got one memory card, then all of those photos are going to end up being destroyed. And that did happen to someone on a trip recently, where she lost all of her photos from that trip because they were all on the same memory card, which was such a shame. But luckily, she did have a phone as well, and she did take photos on her phone. So it wasn't a complete loss. But, those are things to consider when you're doing it. And, you're certainly not going to have time, or you're not going to have a computer with you or a laptop with you to be able to back them up. So it's much more important just to have them on separate memory cards, and then you can change them. Other things as well that you need to consider is you'll need a cleaning kit for the camera. Obviously, on a lot of the treks, it's dusty, it's dirty, and you're going to need to make sure you're keeping your camera clean every night as well, because you don't want to be getting dust into the sensor or into the lens and it's scratching the lens. So you're going to need to think about that. So you've got to take quite a lot more stuff with you if you are taking a camera like that. Obviously, if you're doing night sky photos, you're going to need to have a tripod as well, because you're going to need to be able to keep the camera super still for a long period of time. And you certainly can't do that holding it still in your hand, because you will always shake. So you need to have a tripod with you as well. I've got a lightweight travel tripod, but I've also used quite often one of the little micro tripods that just goes on the floor, is enough to keep it still. Like when I do Kilimanjaro, and I think one of the best photos I took last year was on Kilimanjaro at Horombo Hut, and the Milky Way was there, and some of the clients were out, and I was taking pictures of them with a head torch on, with the Milky Way in the background, and it just looked such a great photo. And I think it was probably I had one of the photos just came out brilliantly, and it was actually of Becky, who I did a podcast with at the end of last year, because Becky did Kilimanjaro and Everest Base Camp within the same month with us. So if you haven't heard that podcast, that's a great one to go back and listen to. But the picture was of Becky, and it's one of my most favorite photos I think I've ever taken on a Kilimanjaro trek. But you do need to have a tripod. But I did take it literally with a very, very small tabletop micro tripod on the floor, and it took it perfectly well. So you haven't got to traipse around with a big heavy tripod with you as well, if you're thinking about that. So but if you are going to want to be taking night sky photos or northern light photos or anything like that, then you are going to want to be able to keep the camera still and steady. So you are going to need a tripod. And then you're also going to need to have obviously a camera bag to keep all that stuff safe in. You don't want to be throwing lenses into your day sack. They're going to need to go into a camera bag that's padded and done as well. So there's those things to think about if you're taking a camera like that. Obviously, if you are into underwater photography, there is a lot more things to consider, and I'm certainly not going to go into an underwater photography setup with you now. But that's a whole lot more kit to carry with you, with the housing and the lighting and everything else. But I do take that on when I'm doing a dive trip, because that is one of my real hobbies, is taking underwater photos. So that is the reason why I switched to the mirrorless camera, because I wanted it for more so for underwater photography. So if I'm heading to Thailand or to Gozo or to the Maldives, then all of that kit will come with me if I know that I'm going to be doing a lot of scuba diving on those trips. I've had a GoPro for years, and a GoPro often sits in my bag with me. And I have a GoPro on a floaty, which is the black floaty handle. And a GoPro is very good if you are doing anything in the water. So if you are canyoning, if you are rafting, if you are doing any of those activities, snorkeling, then a GoPro is a brilliant piece of kit to have. I mean, I haven't had a new GoPro for a while. I think I'm still on like the 9 or something like that. But they are great cameras. If you want to be taking video, then they are brilliant. I took a great video on safari in Tanzania last year, where I got out and I've got the suction clamp for it, and I put the suction clamp on the front of the safari vehicle. And as the safari vehicle was driving through the park, I just had the GoPro on for like 45 minutes just while we were driving through, and it was just such a great video. The stabilization on a GoPro has got a whole lot better over the years. So, if you are walking with it, you can get it on a chest mount. You can there's a strap that you can put on your rucksack strap, so it sits there and can video everything that you're doing. Obviously, if you're cycling, you can put it to your helmet. If you're climbing, you can put it to your helmet. Skiing, if you're surfing, you can put it to the front of your surfboard. They are a great all-round action camera to have. They're great for scuba diving, as long as you have got the outer housing for it, because a GoPro won't go if you're diving down to like 30 meters. A standard GoPro will not go down that deep. I think it only goes to about 16 meters. But you can get the additional housing for it. And on the additional housing, that will then go that you can, it will then allow you to go down to 40 meters. 60 meters, it will allow you to go down to on the new one, if you've got the back door on the housing as well. So they're great things to have. I think the latest one, is better. I think the 11, you can go down to 30 meters. I'm not sure if you need the housing for that one. So just double check how deep you're going if you've got a GoPro, because you obviously don't want to wreck it under the pressure whilst you're diving. But there's loads of accessories for a GoPro. You can get the selfie stick. Like I said, you can get the floaty handle. You can get all the mounts to go on bikes, onto your rucksack, onto your helmet, a chest mount. You can get the suction one if you're going to be traveling with it, if you're surfing with it. So they are a great piece of kit to have. Again, the battery life in them isn't great if you're videoing. So I suggest that you take extra batteries that are fully charged again. And the advantage with the GoPro is you can get a dual battery charger, which is a brilliant piece of kit, and that can go straight into your battery pack, and you can charge the batteries in the evening then from your battery pack as well if you've run out of charge. So I love my GoPro, and I think years ago the stabilization on them wasn't very good. But the stabilization on them is a lot better now. So if you're doing anything in the water, anything where it's dusty or anything like that, then a GoPro is a great option to have. You can take video on it, you can take photos on it. And the best thing I think about GoPro is the app that they've got on the phone. So you can connect the GoPro to your phone, you can download everything onto it, and then GoPro have a really great app that actually will just piece the video together for you. So you select all the clips that you've taken, tell GoPro tell the app how long you want the video to be, and then GoPro, the app will just create a video of your day, your trip, however you want to do it, piece it all together, and you haven't got to worry about editing it all from scratch. And you can make changes to it if you don't like how they've done it, or you want to take a clip out, or you want to extend a clip. You can do that sort of thing in the app. But at the same time, you don't need to do anything. You could literally just put it straight out. And it's such a great app to have on your phone. And the good thing about it is you don't even need to, you can add your phone footage onto the app as well. So if you've got the app and you haven't got, you can still use the app without having a GoPro, or you can put your GoPro footage in and add some phone footage in as well, and mix it up that way. And it gives you some really good results that will remind you of your trip. And I think, that's the biggest thing about when you're on a trip, is you take all of these photos and then what do you actually do with it? And I think for so many people, they take loads of video, they take loads of photos when they're on a trip, but who actually ever sees it? Does it just stay on your phone and you never do anything with it? Do you put it on your socials? Are you constantly putting it on Instagram? Or does it just sit there and never get seen by anyone again? And that's such a shame when that happens. And I mean, I'm really bad for it. Like I sometimes find memory cards that I go to delete them because I need space and I need an extra memory card, and realize that I've never actually done anything with those photos that I've taken. And I did that a couple of years ago on safari, and there were some such great photos on there in the end, but I just kind of forgot about it and didn't actually have the time to do anything with it. And that's the problem, that when you go away on a trip, you could come back with 1,000 photos, and that's a lot of photos, and it would take a lot of time to go through and edit those. And one thing that someone taught me a long time ago now, which was probably one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given from a photography perspective, was just go through them all, pick out like 10 or 15 photos that you really, really like, and then spend the time editing those and getting those photos looking really good, because they're the ones that, stand out to you. And, just spend your time looking at those, because you're never going to go through and edit 1,000 photos. So you might as well start off with just editing 5, 10, 15 photos and having some really good ones. So think about taking a GoPro with you. It is a great option, and one that sits in my bag. I can't comment on the new ones because I haven't had one for a couple of years. Obviously, a new one for a couple of years. I've still got one of the old ones, but they have got a lot better apparently than the one that I've got. And the one that I've got is still really good and gives me good footage as well. And then finally, the other camera that comes with me on every trip is my DJI Osmo Pocket. Now, this is a great bit of kit from DJI. Most people will know DJI from the drones. And they manufacture drones, but they also do this great little camera called the Osmo Pocket. Now, the disadvantage of the Osmo Pocket is it's not waterproof, but the great thing about it is that it is on a gimbal. It is super small. Like, I take it and it fits in the hip pocket on my rucksack, and it just slides into this really small pocket. And as I'm walking along, I can just take it out and video, and as I'm walking along, and it just gives me super, super stable footage that looks amazing. It records in 4K, and we're now on edition 3 of the Osmo Pocket. I've got a number 1, I've got the number 2, I haven't got the number 3, and I don't think there's a great deal of difference between the 2 and the 3. There was quite a lot of difference between the 1 and the 2, which is why I changed up to the 2. But the 3, I don't think, is a great deal different to what I've got for the 2. So I haven't upgraded that one. But I love it. It's one of the best cameras, and the footage that you get from it. And if you go onto the Bucket List Company's website and look at like the Sahara videos that we've taken, like most of that footage, that walking footage, was taken on the Osmo Pocket. And you literally, same with the Chile and Easter Island video, that on our website, it just literally is super easy. You can charge it off a battery pack. It just takes a micro SD card. You can take photos on it as well, but I generally don't use it as a camera for photos. I use it to record video on, and use it for videoing. And, it's just a great piece of kit to have and to record your trip and record your memories with. And, there's nothing worse on your phone when you're walking along and you're trying to record something as you're walking. You just get this bouncing footage. Whereas with the Osmo Pocket, because it's got this, the gimbal and the stabilization on it, it just looks so smooth when you do a recording. And when you pull it off as well, and you upload it to socials or anything like that, the quality on it is really, really good as well. So I would certainly advise the Osmo Pocket as something to have if you want something separate from your phone. So they are the 4 cameras that I take with me. Generally, I will always have my Osmo Pocket, my phone, and my GoPro in my bag whenever I'm away. Like I say, unless I'm going to be taking night sky photos or underwater photography, then I won't generally take my mirrorless camera with me either. The other camera that I have got that sometimes comes along with me, but is becoming more and more difficult to take with me now, is my drone. I've had a drone for probably 10 years now since they started coming out. But obviously there are countries now, and the restrictions and everything else that go with it are just super, super difficult. And you really do need to do your research if you've got a drone as to where you're taking it and what you're going to be doing with it. For example, Morocco is a no-go for drones. Like they're purposefully looking in Morocco for drones in your bags when you go through the airport. And if you have got a drone in your bag, it will be confiscated from you. Likewise, you cannot fly drones in the national parks, for Kilimanjaro. You can't fly them in the national parks in Nepal. I know someone tried to fly their drone on one of our trips to the Annapurna, and the police soon did arrive. And there had to be some sweet talking to kind of get away with it a little bit. But you do need to be looking. There are some places you can fly drones, but there are a lot more places now that you cannot take them and you cannot use them. And it's one reason why my drone very rarely does go in my bag when I am traveling. And again, the other problem with drones is the battery life on them doesn't last very long. A drone battery is quite heavy, so you certainly don't want to be carrying multiple drone batteries with you. And it's just like I say, it's just a bit of a pain for certain countries. So if you have got a drone, my advice to you is, obviously, if you can take it, obviously they're brilliant pieces of kit. And I was in Iceland the other day, and I'd have loved to have taken my drone to Iceland. But when I did the research, there were just so many places that you couldn't fly it, and they were so restricted on where you could fly it, that actually it just wasn't worthwhile me packing it in my bag and worrying about taking it with me. So do your research, but don't try and think, I'll just get away with it, because like I say, you will have it confiscated. People try and fly them in Machu Picchu, but they'll hunt you down. People try and fly them on the Everest Base Camp or Kilimanjaro, and you can get a drone permit to fly on Kilimanjaro, but it will cost you an awful lot of money to get the drone permit. And unless you're doing it from a commercial perspective, then it's kind of not really worth it for the money. They are very expensive to get a drone permit for Kilimanjaro. And I know this because I've just had someone ask me to do it for a commercial project, and the price was quite hefty in the end. It was in the thousands to get a drone permit. So, unless you really, really want to record your trip to Kilimanjaro, you're probably better off leaving the drone at home. Anyway, that's everything that I take in my camera bag when I'm going on a trip. And I just thought I'd share that with you and hopefully give you a little bit of advice on what to do. I might do another episode on the podcast looking at what to do with the photos when you get home. But that's kind of what I take to capture them and what I do to kind of edit them, etc. when I'm coming home. So hopefully you found this episode useful, and it's given you some ideas for what you might take with you on your trip. What I'll do in the show notes is I'll just post links to my cameras that I take with me, so you can see what they are. You can see what the Osmo Pocket is. Again, these things aren't cheap, but if you're doing lots of traveling and you want to record it, then, they are good things to have and they do last. And like I said, my GoPro's probably 4 years old now. My Osmo Pocket's, again, probably 4 years old now, or, 3 years old for the number 2. So they do last a long time. So, it is an expense, but it's an investment, and you want to record these trips that you're going on. So anyway, that's it from me for this week. I hope you found this episode interesting. I hope you've enjoyed it. And I'll be back next week with another episode of the Bucketlister Podcast. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucketlister Podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.